So we went back to the Douro Valley in Portugal. When we made the return trip, this was just for a long weekend, or you could call it a short weekend when you're there. And we went back to the Quinta Do Pego. You can see our first video on the Quinta Do Pego when we were there the first time last year. And after, we went to the Ventozelo Hotel.
There he is.
Shallower down here.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to go in down there. I'm not going to get my hair wet. It's a little chilly, but Scott says it's refreshing. Yeah, and he has not lost his stroke. Woohoo!
Yeah, it's warmer than last.
So this day is actually after we had been up north. So we did fly into Porto and we drove up north, and we have the other videos where we went up to the Ribeira Sacra region, the Ribeiro region. Then we drove south through the Monterey wine region. We didn't stop at the Monterey region. We just continued south until we got back to Pinhao and to this hotel, back to the Quinta Do Pego. And we met my brother and his wife. This time we stayed in the 2 rooms that face over the river. The last time we stayed in the rooms that faced over the terrace. I would select the rooms facing the river if we had an option the next time. And so we had dinner on the property, and the service was exceptional. The food was fabulous, and enjoyed the night around the hotel. And then we talked about our wine visiting plans for the next day. And the first winery that we were headed up to, and we had a reservation set for 11 a.m., was to go up to Favaios, which is about 30 minutes away. So off we went, and you do need a reservation if you want to do a wine tasting there. I don't think you can just walk in, but you could buy wine if you'd like. So this is a very large production facility. So they have the 500 approximate farmers. It is about half an hour outside of Pinhao.
We did get locked up, but it was from stealing ice cream pieces.
Last year when we took the electric boat tour up the river, then we tasted this wine in Quinta de Favaios, and it was a mixture of those grapes right there, Arinto, Muscatel, Gallego, and it sort of tasted like a Sauvignon Blanc. It had a little bit of citrus to it. It was nice. That red wine that I just displayed, that was a reserve that we purchased from after the wine tasting. That was 12 euros.
The name of the architect.
Okay.
But we had Favaios that was lighter and sweeter. So
They make this small bottle called a Favito, and it's made out of the Muscatel Gallego Branco grape. They manufacture 26 million of these a year, and they sell for about €1. Very popular to pour over ice cream or just have, just drink by itself. We also bought this 1999 bottle of Muscatel Calieta, and it's also made from the Muscatel Gallego Branco grape. It was awarded it ranked number 3 in the top 50 wines, and it was first among Portuguese wines. White wine that you saw earlier was $2.75. The red wine, the reserve, was 12 euros. It's €2.75. All very, very reasonably priced, and we would go back and buy more of those wines if they were here in the U.S. as well. We came down the mountain, and then as we went through Pinhao, stopped at Quinta de Bonfim. And this is back to the Symington estate, and we had a glass of wine. We sat on the terrace. We looked across the river and just took a few minutes there in downtown Pinhao before we went to lunch. And right across the river there is Quinta de Carvalhais, where we had a 9 wine tasting. That's also very touristy. You can walk right in and have a tasting. But this was just an opportunity to walk back through the winery here and not have tasting, but just a couple of individual glasses of wine. So we then headed our way over to Sandeman. And last year we tried to get a table, a reservation here at Quinta do Pego up at Sandeman. And that's a Michelin star rated restaurant. It is open for lunch only. So when you go online, you do need to make reservations. We had our reservations arrive there, I think, at 2 p.m. for lunch. And then sat down and proceeded to have delicious food. And the menu is reasonable, definitely reasonable for American prices, probably a little high for Portuguese prices. But we tried a couple of bottles of wine, an Albarino, and then another rosé. And I took a couple of pictures. Lynn took a couple of pictures of the food that we had there. Very, very good. Yeah, very country style, farm to table type eating there that you'll definitely enjoy if you go there. So grab a reservation if you can while you're there and drive up to the top. Enjoy the view. And if you have time, schedule a wine tasting there. So after lunch, we crossed the river and in Pinau, and then drove our way back to the hotel. And this is the Ventozelo Hotel in Quinta. It is the Quinta de Ventozelo, and we selected this bodega, this hotel, because the Quinta Do Pego only had one room or one night available. So we selected this as our second night, and this place is magnificent. Much more touristy. From the hotel on the estate, you can drive right down to the Douro River and then have your glass of wine right there on the river. It's massive. There's a restaurant on site. There's massages. There's all the kinds of activities that you expect from a 5-star hotel. That's a view from our room. We stayed in the little, I guess you call it a long cabana along the ridge top, and then we could just walk right to the pool and walk up for dinner. This is one of the oldest in the region of wine estates, dating back to the 13th century. And it's now owned by Gran Vinho, the world's largest port wine exporter. And we did not have an opportunity to have a wine tasting. Those are the cabanas, that's where we stayed, in that place on the left. We missed the opportunity to have a wine tasting there. Would have loved to have had a wine tasting. But you will find the Ventozelo wines in many restaurants across Europe. There's a wine called Azul de Ventozelo. There is a Quinta de Ventozelo Port LV. So just keep a lookout for that. So then we headed back to Porto and got on the plane and got back to the U.S. in the afternoon.